Psst, check out my Patreon.
So this video is both a blessing and a curse because today we have our very first and only episode where Miss Keane is actually a character for more than 30 seconds. On the other hand, it's an episode about dating. Now, on the lighter side of things, Save the Date isn't nearly as bad as many of the other dating/crush-based episodes we've seen in prior seasons. In fact, I'd honestly compare it to something like Keane on Keane from the original series, because similar to that episode, this premise is all about Miss Keane going on a date. Go figure, the one episode where Miss Keane gets to be a main character in the entire 120 episode run, and it's an episode where she goes on a date. Why am I not surprised? Let's get this over with.
Where do Romeo and Juliet first fall in love?
Fall in love, Miss Keane?
We open with an establishing shot of Townsville's Elemental High School, where the girls are being lectured on Romeo and Juliet by none other than Miss Keane. The mentioning of this Shakespearean work is very cliche, but it does foreshadow that this episode is going to be a romance story. Although, unlike the original work, I don't expect any characters to die at the end this time. Miss Keane seems a bit nervous, probably because she has some performance anxiety due to this being her first and only starring role in a reboot episode. At least, that's how I want to imagine it, but alas, it's actually because she's gearing up for her first date later that night, and has a pretty bad case of butterflies in the stomach because she has no idea how it's going to go. The PPGs chime in and offer to give her a makeover, but Keane quickly denies their help. She only needed to tell someone to get the stress off her chest. She's perfectly capable of preparing herself, and that's probably a good thing because I can't see any way that the girls would make this situation any better. Cut to later that night, where Miss Keane is seen exiting her apartment in heels as she proceeds to head to the Snooty Rose, a callback to the restaurant that was seen in Monkey Love from Season 2, as she proceeds to head to the restaurant where her date will be.
Out of the way, rookie!
Damn, Grandma's got some speed on her, and so does Mojo as he whisks down the road, complaining about having to get rid of his radioactive waste because the city demanded it of him by law. Needless to say, this is where things get interesting, since Mojo ends up nearly colliding with Miss Keane because he wasn't paying attention while driving, and one of those metal drums ended up bursting open and covering her with sludge. Don't text and drive, people.
Don't worry, it's defective.
What's defective?
Oh,
Not gonna lie, Mojo's reaction there is pretty comical to me. It's actually priceless. But yeah, as he said, the waste is defective, which leads to Keane growing to this colossal size and smashing into buildings throughout the town, causing the mayor to call in the Air Force to take her down before she destroys anything else. If I can take a short aside for a moment, I really don't enjoy episodes like this where characters either grow to colossal sizes or shrink down because it just makes me feel really queasy, and this episode is no exception. So bear in mind that I do have some bias against the concept, but that's only because it makes me feel nauseous. I can't really explain why. I've always had this feeling from such a young age, and it's the exact reason why Attack on Titan gives me nightmares. But as it seems, the Air Force is successful in vanquishing her, meaning the Powerpuff Girls were too late to the scene and couldn't do anything to stop it. They do at least inquire the mayor about what happened instead of just flying home and forgetting anything occurred, though I wouldn't have been surprised if the girls did do that, and he explains that a giant lady recklessly tried to kill everyone. But it turns out Keane actually headed to Monster Island, which is where the girls spot her over the horizon and rush to go ask her how she's doing. Meanwhile, a helpless little ant is seen eating some of Mojo's radioactive waste from the same barrel that dumped on Miss Keane. Obviously, this is going to play into the episode, but before I continue on any further, it's time for a word from our sponsor. Raid Shadow Legends. No, I'm just kidding. I would never pull a stunt like that on you. Instead, have the commercial that's actually in the episode.
Do you have watery eyes and an itchy nose? Ask your doctor about Monstril.
Oh yeah! Knock out the monster with Monstril!
Next, there's a scene where Miss Keane just kinda explains what happened to the girls and how she's ashamed of herself, so she decides to live on the island and educate the monsters there instead. There is an attempt here for the girls to try and convince her that things aren't all that bad now that she's giant, but Keane isn't having it. Not after she just got done hearing everyone call her a monster, anyways. Can't say I'm surprised though, Instead of showing concern for this innocent woman who's shouting apologies with a distressed look on her face as she accidentally destroys buildings that she clearly has no intent of doing, everyone's treating her like garbage because that's all Reboot Townsville is full of. But before their conversation can continue any longer, the girls have to fly back into the city because that ant that I mentioned has turned into a giant as well and is wreaking more havoc and destruction than Keane ever did. I don't hear the townsfolk calling that thing a monster. No, seriously, there's not a single scene where a citizen actually points out that it's a monster. But they did it for Keane. Just saying. The ant even takes out the Air Force with no issue. So then was the Air Force actually effective in removing Miss Keane, or did she just choose to leave without putting up a fight? I'm willing to bet it was the latter. These schmucks didn't stand a chance, and Keane probably would have destroyed them had she actually fought back. And okay, can I just point out how abysmal this action sequence between the girls and the ant is? It's no secret that the Powerpuff Girls reboot sucks at action. Like, it's been like this since the very beginning of the show. But let me take this opportunity to show you in exquisite detail exactly how bad this is. So for starters, we see Blossom fly in and punch this ant square in the face. Only, it isn't Blossom that makes contact with him. It's this intangible beam of light that simply represents Blossom because we can't actually see her physically hit the ant with her fists, but that's not enough. So then Buttercup decides that instead of being the toughest fighter that she's supposed to be, she uses her Green Lantern powers, not to drop bombs on this guy, but to create little puffs of smoke that make him cough. Puffs of smoke. Like, are you serious? This is it? But Bubbles, oh, she takes the cake.
Yeah! And... Huh? Where'd he go?
Gee, I wonder, where could he have possibly gone? It's not like he jumped straight up into the air directly in front of me. Like, holy shit, this is some of the worst action I think I've ever seen. It doesn't take a genius to come up with a decent action sequence. This is just abysmal. It's one thing if Bubbles wasn't facing the ant, like she got knocked down or was behind a building or something, but the fact that she's flying directly at it, there's no excuse. And I'm sure many of you have already been noticing comparisons to the episode Bubble Vision from the original, where Bubbles also faced some sort of physical impairment and had to overcome it to defeat a giant ant. The only difference is now is that instead of Bubbles having vision problems, Miss Keane is giant. That's about it. Otherwise, it feels like it's the exact same episode, but worse. Man, it's season 3 now, and we're still witnessing ripoffs. How about that? And during all of this, I should add that Todd, Miss Keane's date, in case you didn't remember from that earlier clip, gets a few cutaways dedicated to him as he is seen sitting at the restaurant all by himself waiting for Keane to show up. I kind of feel bad for the guy. I mean, he's as nervous as she is and gets treated like a pathetic loser by both the waiter and his own mother, when really he seems like a genuinely swell guy. I mean, he doesn't do anything wrong. He's super patient and very kind to everyone he talks to. Unfortunately, Todd's genuine personality isn't enough to save the girls from the monster that's currently whooping their butts, so in comes Miss Keane to save the day because she just couldn't stand aside helplessly while her students were in danger. You know, like any good teacher should. But we are then treated to a pretty decent kaiju-like battle between Keane and the ant, with the girls helping out on the sidelines. It's a little annoying that this is yet another episode where the girls can't just save the day themselves, but seeing as this is Miss Keane's only episode in the entire reboot, I'll give it a pass this one time. After delivering the final blow, Miss Keane successfully regains her confidence now that the giant is defeated, and she shrinks back down to her normal size again because, conveniently enough, the effects of the radioactive liquid were only temporary.
Told you it was defective.
She then walks over to her date and explains the whole situation, who is dedicated enough to wait through all of that just for her to show up, even despite the fact that nothing but debris remain around the restaurant that was once there. The episode even ends on a happy note, with the two getting along great and bonding over how nervous they were for the occasion. But they're more comfortable now that they're in each other's company. Like I said, Todd is a great person and doesn't deserve the chastising that he received. But again, garbage people. And that does it for Save the Date. Truthfully, this wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. In fact, if anything, the romance angle really isn't all that obnoxious because it isn't made to be the focus of the episode. It's not like we're treated to overly long fantasy sequences of Keane getting prepared for her date or uncomfortably imagining the two of them in love together, wink wink nudge nudge, and then watching her go on said date. All of the events that transpire happened in the foreground, while the date aspect was a minor setup that pulled Keane into the story story and acts as the final payoff. I'm much more interested in seeing Keane go and stand up for herself despite what other people are saying, rather than sitting around in a restaurant and talking. It feels like this series is finally getting its footing on the whole superhero aspect of the show. It only took them 80 episodes, but look at each plot we've gone over since the start of the season. Other than Not So Secret Service, every episode has had some action, a villain with a scheme, or in this case, a monster threat. We're finally seeing these things occur on a consistent basis, even if the episodes themselves aren't always up to the same quality. The principles are there. It's just a shame that that streak's going to come to an end with the next episode that I have to review. I am not looking forward to it.